Thrive Nation, it's Paige Taylor, and today we're going to be sitting down with Clay Clark and Jack Nadel. Jack is a decorated World War II veteran, and he's also the founder of Jack Nadel International, one of the top distributors of promotional merchandise in the entire United States. Today, we're going to be talking about Jack Nadel's story, a lifetime of riches. You're going to hear about the mindset that he had to achieve to overcome all of the adversities in his life. And you're also going to hear about all the successes he had as well. So let's get right into it.
Well, Jack, thank you for letting me come to your casa and harass you, my friend.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you here.
I'm absolutely honored. I feel like talking to you today. It's sort of it's a walk through history as well as a look into the future. And you're such an entrepreneurial guy. You've had six decades as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. It's let's see. I guess my entrepreneurial career started the day I left the Air Force, which would be 70 years ago.
70 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, today we're talking about kind of your story, really a lifetime of riches. And I want to start basically with where you grew up. Where did you grow up, my friend?
I grew up in New York City, on the streets of New York, and I thought, in retrospect, of course, it was a great education because I guess I learned how to survive. I learned that as tough as you are, there's someone tougher. As big as you are, there's someone bigger. And I went along with those streets in those days were almost owned by gangs. And each gang had a different orientation, some religious, some other. But the toughest one was called the Pollies, and they were right a few blocks away. So the first day I walked to school, I was 5 years old or 6 years old. And I went right through there and I got stopped. And there was a whole gang and they asked for protection money. And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, it costs you 5 cents to go through here. It costs you 10 cents a week." I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, I don't have 5 cents." So they beat me up. And I learned something from that. I walked away. I didn't pay the protection money. I never saw them again. I just walked around that street.
Really?
I just avoided it, which reminded me later of the strategy in the Pacific. When we were moving towards Japan, they kept skipping islands that were not necessary. They didn't have to waste life and money on taking something that wasn't necessary. So I wasn't going to prove anything. I'm not going to beat them. I don't even want to confront them.
Yeah.
And the answer was to avoid it.
So you kind of knew where the mines were and you avoided it.
I avoided it. Listen, you get 10 kids and they're all taller, bigger than you. I was a big kid. There was no contest. It was just, my favorite author, Damon Runyon. The race doesn't always belong to the big and the strong, but that's the way to bet it.
Well, I want to ask you this question here because, you grew up in a childhood that sounded like it was tough in certain areas. When did the idea to become an entrepreneur first? When did that idea first come into your head? Do you remember when that happened?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there was no stigma to being on the streets of New York. I mean, the fact that I was poor was fact, but everybody around me was poor.
Okay.
And most of them were poorer than I was. And I had an angelic mother who, when she prepared food for us, always prepared for somebody else as well. So I learned that you could get along together. It was like a 1928 League of Nations.
Okay.
Every race, everybody was represented there, and there were gang fights and all that, but they all got straightened out and learned how to survive and how to exist alongside of each other. I think the first time I had the entrepreneurial thought, I saw a guy had a contest on marbles. And you got a cigar box and put 3 holes in the cigar box. And if you rolled the marble through the hole, you won 10 marbles. Almost impossible. So I got a box. I wanted to be on that side of the action.
Yeah.
So I purveyed a box, and I was the owner of a lot of very good Emmys because of it.
So that was your first business, your first
I would
entrepreneurial
say,
endeavor.
I would say so.